Today we have the beautiful conclusion to chapter 18 of A Course in Miracles. Chapter 18 is called The Passing of the Dream, and this is the last section, and it's called The Two Worlds. It's a really lovely section, very poetic. Here we go. You have been told to bring the darkness to the light and guilt to holiness. And you have also been told that error must be corrected at its source. Therefore, it is the tiny part of yourself, the little thought that seems split off and separate, the Holy Spirit needs. The rest is fully in God's keeping and needs no guide. Yet this wild and delusional thought needs help because in its delusions, it thinks it is the Son of God, whole and omnipotent, sole ruler of the kingdom it's set apart to tyrannize by madness into obedience and slavery. This is the little part you think you stole from heaven. Give it back to heaven. Heaven has not lost it, but you have lost sight of heaven. Let the Holy Spirit remove it from the withered kingdom in which you set it off, surrounded by darkness, guarded by attack, and reinforced by hate. Within its barricades is still a tiny segment of the Son of God, complete and holy, serene and unaware of what you think surrounds it. Be you not separate, for the one who does surround it has brought union to you, returning your little offering of darkness to the eternal light. How is this done? It is extremely simple, being based on what this little kingdom really is. The barren sands, the darkness and the lifelessness are seen only through the body's eyes. Its bleak sight is distorted, and the messages it transmits to you who made it to limit your awareness are little and limited, and so fragmented they are meaningless. From the world of bodies made by insanity, insane messages seem to be returned to the mind that made it. And these messages bear witness to this world, pronouncing it as true. For you sent forth these messengers to bring this back to you. Everything these messages relate to you is quite external. There are no messages that speak of what lies underneath, for it is not the body that could speak of this. Its eyes perceive it not, its senses remain quite unaware of it, its tongue cannot relay its messages. Yet God can bring you there if you are willing to follow the Holy Spirit through seeming terror, trusting Him not to abandon you and leave you there. For it is not His purpose to frighten you, but only yours. You are severely tempted to abandon Him at the outside ring of fear, but He would lead you safely through and far beyond. The circle of fear lies just below the level the body sees, and seems to be the whole foundation on which the world is based. Here are all the illusions, all the twisted thoughts, all the insane attacks, the fury, the vengeance, and betrayal that were made to keep the guilt in place so that the world could rise from it and keep it hidden. Its shadow rises to the surface enough to hold its most external manifestations in darkness and to bring despair and loneliness to it and keep it joyless. Yet its intensity is veiled by its heavy coverings and kept apart from what was made to keep it hidden. The body cannot see this, for the body arose from this for its protection, which depends on keeping it not seen. The body's eyes will never look on it, yet they will see what it dictates. The body will remain guilt's messenger and will act as it directs as long as you believe the guilt is real. For the reality of guilt is the illusion that seems to make it heavy and opaque, impenetrable, and a real foundation for the ego's thought system. Its thinness and transparency are not apparent until you see the light behind it, and then you see it as a fragile veil before the light. This heavy-seeming barrier, this artificial floor that looks like rock, is like a bank of low dark clouds that seem to be a solid wall before the sun. Its impenetrable appearance is wholly an illusion. It gives way softly to the mountaintops that rise above it, and has no power at all to hold back anyone willing to climb above it and see the sun. It is not strong enough to stop a button's fall, nor hold a feather. Nothing can rest upon it, for it is but an illusion of a foundation. Try but to touch it, and it disappears. Attempt to grasp it, and your hands hold nothing. Yet in this cloud bank, it is easy to see a whole world rising. A solid mountain range, a lake, a city, all rise in your imagination, and from the clouds the messengers of your perception return to you, assuring you that it is there. Figures stand out and move about, actions seem real, and forms appear and shift from loveliness to the grotesque. And back and forth they go as long as you would play the game of children's make-believe. Yet however long you play it, and regardless of how much imagination you bring to it, you do not confuse it with the world below, nor seek to make it real. So should it be with the dark clouds of guilt, no more impenetrable and no more substantial. You will not bruise yourself against them in traveling through. Let your guide teach you their unsubstantial nature as he leads you past them, for beneath them is a world of light whereon they cast no shadows. Their shadows lie upon the world beyond them, still further from the light. Yet from them to the light their shadows cannot fall. This world of light, this circle of brightness, is the real world where guilt meets with forgiveness. Here the world outside is seen anew without the shadow of guilt upon it. Here are you forgiven, for here you have forgiven everyone. Here is the new perception where everything is bright and shining with innocence, washed in the waters of forgiveness, and cleansed of every evil thought you laid upon it. Here there is no attack upon the Son of God, and you are welcome. Here is your innocence, waiting to clothe you and protect you and make you ready for the final step in the journey inward. Here are the dark and heavy garments of guilt laid by and gently replaced by purity and love. Yet even forgiveness is not the end. Forgiveness does make lovely, but it does not create. It is the source of healing, but it is the messenger of love and not its source. Here you are led that God himself can take the final step unhindered, for here does nothing interfere with love, letting it be itself. A step beyond this holy place of forgiveness, a step still further inward, but the one you cannot take, transports you to something completely different. Here is the source of light, nothing perceived, forgiven, nor transformed, but merely known. This course will lead to knowledge, but knowledge itself is still beyond the scope of our curriculum. Nor is there any need for us to try to speak of what must forever lie beyond words. We need remember only that whoever attains the real world, beyond which learning cannot go, will go beyond it, but in a different way. Where learning ends, there God begins, for learning ends before him who is complete where he begins, and where there is no end. It is not for us to dwell on what cannot be attained. There is too much to learn. The readiness for knowledge still must be attained. Love is not learned. Its meaning lies within itself, and learning ends when you have recognized all it is not. That is the interference. That is what needs to be undone. Love is not learned because there never was a time in which you knew it not. Learning is useless in the presence of your Creator, whose acknowledgement of you and yours of him so far transcend all learning that everything you learned is meaningless, replaced forever by the knowledge of love and its one meaning. Your relationship with your brother has been uprooted from the world of shadows, and its unholy purpose has been safely brought through the barriers of guilt, washed with forgiveness, and set shining and firmly rooted in the world of light. From there it calls to you to follow the course it took, lifted high above the darkness and gently placed before the gates of heaven. The holy instant in which you and your brother were united is but the messenger of love, sent from beyond forgiveness to remind you of all that lies beyond it. Yet it is through forgiveness that it will be remembered. And when the memory of God has come to you in the holy place of forgiveness, you will remember nothing else, and memory will be as useless as learning, for your only purpose will be creating. Yet this you cannot know until every perception has been cleansed and purified and finally removed forever. Forgiveness removes only the untrue, lifting the shadows from the world and carrying it safe and sure within its gentleness to the bright world of new and clean perception. There is your purpose now, and it is there that peace awaits you. Okay, this section is called The Two Worlds. So a lot here. Let's go back a moment to the Gospels. What is the one thing that Jesus seems to harp upon in the Gospels, and what maybe he's most remembered for? I mean, I think when we think of Jesus, we think of a being. In general, he's a symbol. He's a symbol of love and forgiveness. Even though in the Gospels, he says things which seem to be harsh. There's moments where he says, I have not come to bring peace but a sword. you know, you and you must even be willing to hate your father, your mother, your brother for my sake. He curses a fig tree. He tells his apostles to bring swords with them when they go to Jerusalem. So there's a bunch of things where there seems to be something of an identity crisis going on there. That's the thing about the Gospels, is that they're not completely consistent. And if you try to look for consistency, you'd be hard pressed. But in general, I think, despite that, I think we tend to think of Jesus, even people that don't believe in Jesus, he's a symbol of a great teacher, wisdom, but most of all, love and forgiveness. And some of the great sayings are, turn the other cheek, love your enemies, love those who hate you even, judge not lest you be judged, forgive not, even 7 times 7 times, see not the speck in your brother's eye, but see the log in your own eye, etc., etc. It's about non-judgment, forgiveness, and ultimately love. And that's really what A Course in Miracles is getting to. And it's really, if any word really describes what A Course in Miracles is teaching, it's forgiveness. It's the way of forgiveness. But Jesus is here saying that in order to do that work is ultimately going to take you back to love, which is God, or you could say the love of God. But before you get there, you have to go through your fear. You have to go through the hate. You have to go through hell, essentially. And many people don't make that journey. And why is that? Just for that very reason, because it's scary, because there's a lot of fear. There's Jesus calls it a whole circle of fear here, and it lies just under the level of the body. So he's saying that there's this, if you go a little bit deeper, you're going to start to see the fear, the guilt, all those things. They're right there. They're under the surface generally. We can't see them. A lot of people say, "Hey, I'm good. I don't feel guilty. I feel, I feel pretty good. I'm doing okay." But if you really start to look deeper within yourself, you're gonna start to see that. You're gonna be confronted with that. And Jesus is saying, this is where you need someone like me. It doesn't have to be me, but ultimately it will. Ultimately there's only one, right? Whether you call it Jesus or whatever you call it, there is a guide. There is a true guide within yourself. You could call it your higher self. You could call it your inner teacher, your inner guru. But you take the hand of that. Jesus, in the Course, it's also called the Holy Spirit. You take the hand and you are willing to look at the fear, to go through the fear. Trusting, and trust is a very important thing here. Trusting that you're going to make it. And when you go through all that darkness, all that fear, you're going to get to the light. And you'll have worked through all the interference. Jesus called the interference. Everything that's in the way, all the barriers, right? It is not your task to seek for love, but only to seek and find all the barriers that you have made against love, that you have built against love. That's one of the great lines in the Course, often attributed to Rumi, but it's really in A Course in Miracles, and probably got attributed to Rumi later. That's my take on it. But either way, it doesn't matter. It's a great line. But the point being is that what is the learning of this course? What is the curriculum? It's not really learning, it's unlearning. We're unlearning the ego. We're seeing ultimately, and Jesus is saying this here, we're ultimately seeing how flimsy the ego really is and how nothing it really is. We're learning to see that there's really nothing there. It's all a mirage. It's all a smokescreen. What is it? Or a cloud screen? What is it hiding? It's hiding God, because we have chosen. We chose. We wanted that. We wanted to be separate from God. So it's doing what we asked it to do. It's creating a barrier because we don't want God. We threw that away. We threw God. We basically said, F you, F you to God. However you want to look at it. You could also look at this, like I was saying last time, as a game of hide and seek. You don't have to look at it like we threw God away. It could be more like we're having a fun game. and part of the game is, how far can we get away from God and still get back to God? How deep can we go into the darkness and still find our way back to God? And how great that will feel when we do find God again. And Jesus does mention here the child's game of make-believe. So there's a lot of children's games you could bring in here. Make-believe, hide and go seek. But, there's also a way. The language that Jesus tends to use, though, is not the language of hide and seek as much as it is that we decided, we had the tiny mad idea. The tiny mad idea is kind of a capricious or whimsical idea. So maybe it could be understood that way. But it could also be seen as we chose to be separate. In choosing to be separate, we created a universe, basically a fantasy land that we now seem to inhabit, and it's very real and it's very serious. but Jesus keeps bringing us back to the original, how it started, which was this tiny mad idea, which was so laughable that no one laughed, basically. And it not only did no one laugh, but it never actually happened, really. The whole thing that we take to be very serious and very, the tragedy of life ultimately is based, Jesus is saying, in nothing. It's we've forgotten the cause. And Jesus is trying to bring it back to our memory, help us to remember it. So this whole passage here, which is very beautiful, is really just a way of saying this is all really simple, and all you need to do is just trust in the message here. Trust that fear is an illusion. All fear, every manifestation of fear goes back to this tiny mad idea. And it can be easily removed if you just let it. But as long as you continue to distrust and hold on, you are going to experience the ramifications of that choice. And that's okay because Jesus understands that fear is great. And so I'm going to say this again and again, this is a cure through love, not fear. There's no fear in what the Course is saying. The Course is not saying God is going to punish you if you don't have faith. The opposite is true. God does nothing. God just is. God doesn't even know about this whole thing because it's a complete illusion. It's like the tiny ripple or the little sunbeam from the last section. It has no effect on God. God is completely beyond that. At the same time, there's a sense in which, because we are God, God is us, God is in some ways lacking, in some ways upset or sad because we are suffering. And so there is, in one sense, a lack there, but not really. So anyway, the fear is the only thing in the way. We need to be willing to go through the fear. And once we are willing to go through the fear, we're going to see how simple and easy it really is. And that's really the gist of this whole section. I hope I didn't really go too deep into the actual words here. Let's just say this to end. Forgiveness is the last illusion, right? Forgiveness is helpful to a point. Once you've been fully purified, your consciousness has been purified, and you've seen the equality of you and your brother, and forgiveness is a given, then you are ready for that last step, which is the return to God, where there's no need for forgiveness, and there's no need for a world, there's no need for bodies, there's no need for anything, because it's been understood that those things were only needed to get away from God in the first place. So once you've returned to God, there's no need for those things. And we'll continue this discussion next time. Chapter 19 is called The Attainment of Peace, and we'll see you there. Thank you.